Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio In, and this is the Kefine Delci. Of course, recently I reviewed their planar IEM, the Planar, and I was really surprised by its detail levels, especially given it was only priced at around $100. But what didn't surprise me was its tuning, because it was just another V-shaped tuned IEM. But now we have the Delci, and I'm happy to say this is tuned much better, and it comes a little closer to my tuning preference. But just how good is it? Well, that's the question I want to try and answer today in this review. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So I've already done a separate unboxing video, but you can see what comes in the package right here on the table. So we'll go ahead and just skip straight into the specifications and design. It's on sale right now, I believe, for $59, but the regular price is $75. It has a single 10mm dynamic driver setup, and it uses an all aluminum alloy shell. So it does feel quite robust, and it's also very light. Fit and comfort are excellent, due probably in part to its smaller size. I have seen smaller IEMs out there, but I would still consider this one to be somewhere kind of in between a medium and a small. So I think it should work with most ear sizes just fine. The cable is also good, has 2-pin connectors, and it has a 3.5mm termination. It's probably one of the better cables I've seen at this price point. It does still feel a little plasticky to touch, but it's surprisingly manageable. I actually haven't really had too many issues at all with tangling, so that's nice. And it goes great with the gunmetal IEM shells. Speaking of which, the shell design of the Delci is really cool. I actually like it better than the all-black Planar. All in all, for the price, I think the general build quality is good, and I'm pretty happy with the accessories too. Okay, let's move on to the sound. So as I had mentioned in my opening, this is tuned a little closer to my preference because it takes a more neutral approach as opposed to the typical V-shaped tuning you see with many of the other IEMs under $100. It's not perfect though. It does still have a few little issues, but when you compare it to, again, the other budget IEMs, it just seems like they put a little more effort into making sure to tune the upper mids or the upper half to keep things nice and natural sounding. Now, one of the areas it doesn't sound maybe as natural as I would like is in the lower half or the lower mids, because it's got quite a bit of low mid energy and warmth that, while it does give male vocals and some instruments that land there some heft and note weight, it can sound somewhat unnatural at times. But let's go ahead and break things down a little more, and we'll start with the bass. So in terms of bass quantity, it has a lot, and it can at times come across as sounding just a little unbalanced. However, at the same time, it's actually very satisfying, and the overall bass quality is pretty impressive for this price point. And I think its bass dynamics were one of the things that kind of impressed me at first listen. And what that tells me is that this is a very fairly well implemented dynamic driver, because that's one of the attributes that I look for in a dynamic driver. And I think most would probably agree. Not many other driver types out there can produce dynamics and provide that visceral air moving sensation that a well implemented dynamic driver can. And this does that quite well. Now, again, there is some bass bleeding over into the lower mids, so it does affect low mid detail, but I feel like it's not really enough to be any kind of major distraction, and the other good bass qualities help to kind of offset its deficiencies. And again, we are talking about a budget set, and to be honest, this is probably easily some of the better bass and mid-range I've heard in a budget set. Now, as you move to the upper mids, this is where the Delci really starts to shine, in my opinion, because as I had mentioned a moment ago, the whole upper half of the Delci's tuning is done very well in terms of naturalness. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Cara as far as the tuning curve in the upper mids. The bottom half is pretty different, but the top half has some of that same very natural presentation that makes the Cara so appealing to me. Of course, I don't think this can compete with the Cara on a technical level, but it does have, again, some of that same nice, smooth, and natural vocal and instrument presentation, and I feel like it's done well enough to give the Delci that edge, and it makes it somewhat of a standout IEM among the competition because it's just that good, in my opinion. And that's just the mids. That same smooth, natural characteristic carries through into the treble as well. And what's interesting is if you look at the graph, you'll see what appears to be a pretty significant peak right around 8K, but it doesn't sound like it looks at all, because in actuality that peak is pushed a little higher up, probably closer to 9K. So while there might be just a small amount of peakiness, it's not going to impact the sound or affect its naturalness as much as you might expect it to. It does still have a little spiciness to it, but it's still somewhat controlled. As a matter of fact, the treble presentation of the Delci is very, very good. Cymbal strikes have enough energy and texture, but still sound quite controlled and, again, quite natural. Hi-hats also have a nice smooth sizzle to them while still revealing some of the hi-hat detail as well. Speaking of detail, the Delci's technicalities are about as good as any other IEM in this price range. So the soundstage is pretty good. It's about average width for an IEM. The forward depth and instrument layering are pretty good. Its forward presentation is what I would consider to be kind of shallow, as are most other budget IEMs. And it's kind of on the same level as far as detail also. It's going to be about the same as most of the other average performing sets in this price category, like the CVJ Freedom, Tangzu Fudu, or Veti OD100, and maybe even the Mars T5S, which is actually a little more expensive. But I do feel like the Delci falls just short of the Semgot EA500LM and Moondrop Aria 2. But again, the thing that sets it apart from a lot of the competition is its tuning in the upper mids and treble. And it's good enough, in my opinion, to edge it past much of the competition and elevate it closer to the top with IEMs like the EA500LM and Aria 2, but not quite to the levels of, say, the Galileo, Magic 1, F1 Pro, or Kima Classic, which those are slightly more expensive, landing around $100, I think. But what that means is that of the sets I have at or very close to the $75 price point, the only two other sets that I feel can outperform the Delci are the EA500LM and the Aria 2. And the truth is, they don't outperform it by much. It's just that I prefer the bass presentation of the Aria 2 and EA500 just a little bit more. It just seems like the bass is a little cleaner, more controlled, and I'm just maybe a little more likely to reach for those sets as opposed to the Delci. So the bottom line, though, is that this is a very strong showing for the Kefine Delci, which makes it a very easy recommendation from me, especially if you prefer that neutral, warm presentation that this offers. Not to mention It's got a great design, it's well built, and it's really nicely accessorized for this price range. So that concludes my review of the Kefine Delci. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day.